and he is State Representative Jim Struzzi. Joining us in the studio this morning, our conversation brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Todd.
It's good to see you. Actually,
Thanks.
Yeah, I didn't think you were a real person. I thought you were a guy on the other end of the line.
Well, it's good to be here in person. We've been rather busy in Harrisburg these past few months. You know, we went from appropriations hearings to regular session, and we are pushing a lot of good bills for Pennsylvania.
You still don't have the full voice back either.
No, I don't. I'm working on it. I don't know what happened, if I got some slight case of laryngitis or something, but it's coming back.
That's good. That's good. Okay, so big piece of legislation announced yesterday having to do with elections in Pennsylvania. I'm assuming that what was announced yesterday is not the last piece of legislation we're going to hear, is it?
Well, it's certainly not, but it is a piece of the puzzle. I was completely shocked, appalled during the budget appropriations hearings to learn that private entities had given millions and millions and millions of dollars to the Department of State for the election. And I scratch my head thinking, how is that possible that a private entity can give money to a Department of State towards an election? And that money was used in specific areas in Pennsylvania to get out the vote. But they were specific urban areas, and really we were shortchanged here in Indiana County and many other rural counties because we didn't see any of that money. And so we started asking questions. First of all, is that even legal? Can a private entity give money to a Department of State? And it turns out that they can. So my colleagues, Representative Clint Owlett and Representative Eric Nelson and I got together and we started talking about this, and we said simply, this can't be allowed to occur. I'm not saying that they used the money to influence the election, but it does make you wonder. And so the bill that we're putting out there is that, it's going to have to be that if you're going to contribute money to the Department of State, and we had to allow some flexibility here, but it must be used across this Commonwealth. It can't simply be used in targeted areas. It has to be used widespread across the Commonwealth so that we can all benefit from it.
Based upon population of people who are of voting age,
right,
and a very important component of the bill. The contributor can't have a say in political decisions or how the election is run in a particular area. They can contribute to offset the expenses, but that's really all the influence that they should have.
And rightly so. And when you peel the Band-Aid off and you scratch the surface a little bit, you see that a lot of this money came from social media owners. Bloomberg, Facebook, a lot of this money coming into the Commonwealth came from those entities. Put two and two together, it doesn't add up to me. And that was a very serious concern. And I was literally appalled, scratching my head during that budget hearing to hear the Secretary of State say that, yeah, we received all this money and millions from these entities. And it just can't be allowed to occur like that. And you talk about election integrity. People want to know the transparency behind all this. And to me, that is not transparent at all. And so hopefully this bill will fix some of that. But you mentioned, we have a lot of bills we're working on right now. And the plan through the state government committee, they've been having these hearings for the past few months. And I encourage people to tune in. There's still a few more. I believe there's actually one today. Looking at what happened during the 2020 election, what do we need to do to fix anything that was broken or changed? And as you and I discussed last week, there are a lot of discrepancies county to county in Pennsylvania because there isn't a clear message from the Department of State on how elections should be run. Now, I think we do a great job here in Indiana County with great staff, but that is not the same across this Commonwealth. So I believe in early May, we're going to roll out a package of bills that will address election integrity. So I want people to know, because I still get a lot of calls and concerns, that we are working on it. We are taking it very seriously, and we will do what we need to do to make sure that people have faith in our election process.
A lot of states are doing the exact same thing. Georgia rolled out their election reform package and roundly applauded by some and roundly criticized by others. And you know that there's going to be opposition to any bill. It doesn't matter what that bill happens to be, even with the best of intentions. When you see what Georgia is doing, Florida also very much involved in it, and the way that that election issues are being addressed. Pennsylvania decided to do, as you are doing in the legislature, number of hearings, get to the bottom of what happened and whether it was right or not, and then work on the solution. Some might just start firing away, but it sounds like the legislature really wants to examine what happened and make sure that they go loophole free.
Well, that's absolutely right, Todd. And I will tell you that it is going to be a bipartisan approach. We are working with our colleagues across the aisle because through the course of these hearings, they are seeing things as well that make you scratch your head. And so while it won't be even as nearly close as harsh as some of the stuff in Georgia, I think some of that stuff was a little extreme. We're looking for a balanced approach. And our message is it's going to be easy to vote, hard to cheat. And that's the message that we're trying to send. And I think it's going to be a compromise on some things. We're working with the governor's administration as well to make sure that this can be signed into law, because clearly we don't want to do all this work only to have the governor veto it or not sign it into a law. So I think this is going to be a bipartisan approach to address some common sense things in the election process to make sure that people, again, have that faith in the process, to know that there is transparency, that there is integrity, and that it will be easy to vote, hard to cheat, and that every vote will count and will count once.
Looming over all of this is H.R. 1 coming out of Washington. Have members of the Pennsylvania delegation to Washington, have you had contact with them to register your opposition to H.R. 1? I
have not had discussions with GT personally, but I know that we have serious concerns with that. I don't believe that the federal government should unilaterally decide how elections are run in each state. I think that should be up to us, and I believe that's our constitutional right. We are trying to fix the issues that we have here in Pennsylvania, and I think that we're going to do that, as I said, through a good bipartisan approach. It's going to be a good, fair-handed bill, but to do that across the Commonwealth with so much diversity in this nation, I don't think that's fair or even reasonable.
All right, let's move on to other things happening with you with the State House of Representatives. I'm sure that you watched with great interest the appropriations hearings in the Senate. Yes. After you held your own in the House. What's your impression of what you heard in the Senate, and particularly we're thinking state system of higher education?
I'm very concerned for the state system of higher education. We need to do everything we can to save the system. I understand Chancellor Greenstein's comments caused a lot of concern among faculty, and I understand that among the system, among students. We need to work together to do what's right for the state system. Bottom line to me is I want to save IUP, whatever it takes. I've had a lot of conversations with faculty members, with the administration. We're moving in the right direction, but I think there's a fundamental flaw in higher ed overall right now, Todd, and that is that we fund the state-related schools as well to the tune of more than, I believe, $700 million annually, and the state-related schools like Pitt, Penn State, Temple, Lincoln are asking for an additional $40 million in this year's budget at a time when we're flat funding the state system. To me, that doesn't make sense. And they'll tell you, and I asked them these questions during the appropriations hearings, these other entities use this to lower their tuition rates. If they're lowering their tuition rates to compete with the state system, we're creating an unfair playing field when it comes to recruiting students. And I think that's part of the problem that we have within the state system, is that they can't lower their tuition rates without us giving them more state funding. So we have to fix the problems within the system, provide more funding so that they can create those competitive rates and keep those students here in Pennsylvania. So there's simply demographic challenges with not enough students right now graduating high school. And that's not just in Indiana. That's across this Commonwealth and really across this nation in many cases. But we need to make sure that we're fair funding these higher educational entities so that they can create competitive tuition rates. The state system was designed to be an affordable quality education for Pennsylvania students, and right now it's not that. I hear from a lot of parents who say, if I can go to a branch campus of Penn State or Pitt, why would I go to a state school system and I can have, a degree from Pitt or Penn State? Not discrediting the state system by any means, but we have created an unfair playing field, and we need to fix that.
Yeah, the legislature basically is being asked to compete against itself.
Yeah, and I'm up against it because I'm only one of 14 legislators, and Senator Pittman as well, that has a state system school in their district. And you try to convince someone who gets, in their mind, sees no benefit from the state-related or the state system, trying to convince them to, provide millions and millions of dollars to the state system, it's an uphill fight. I've been carrying that torch and trying to advocate for additional funding for the state system, but it's very challenging when we continue to hear about all the problems within the state system. So first of all, we have to fix the system, and then second, we have to find a way to get more funding into the state system.
We've heard about a whole bunch of money coming to Pennsylvania's school districts from the federal government.
Yes.
Monday, I guess, is when we're going to hear the exact amounts that will be allocated for each school district. How does that impact what the state does in terms of budget allocations for the coming budget?
Well, I think we're still trying to understand the parameters of how that money can be used. It's an incredible amount of money coming into Pennsylvania. And as you said, every county is going to get millions. Municipalities are going to see a lot of funding channeled their way, school districts, and the state itself. I think we have to be clear on how we use this money. We have to be responsible. I think that there should be some benefit to the taxpayers with this amount of money coming back to our local communities. I think we all have to be cognizant and wise in how we're using this money. I know that myself and Senator Pittman meet with the commissioners regularly. We'll be meeting this afternoon, and we have these discussions. And it's important that we have a vision for how this money is going to be used, but I think we need to be careful and use it wisely to the better benefit of all Indiana County and Pennsylvania residents.
Governor Wolf administration pushing for increases in the minimum wage. They want to get eventually to $15 per hour. They don't make any proposals as to how the companies that would lose that money by having to pay it out would make it back, other than just raise your prices. There is a proposal to make it $10 an hour, and it's got Republican backing. How do you feel about the minimum wage?
I think a modest increase is warranted, and I think most businesses would support that. But the bottom line is, right now, only I believe about 1.3% of our workforce in Pennsylvania actually makes minimum wage. About 74,000 people, most of them young single adults, make a minimum wage right now. So it's for the argument that they put out there that this is going to help working families and things like that is simply not true. When you have such a small fraction of people making minimum wage, you'd be hard pressed to find a job in Indiana County that pays minimum wage right now, because most businesses understand it's a competitive market right now. There are jobs out there and they need to pay better, and people understand that. So I don't understand the argument of $15 an hour. That will cripple most businesses. It'll take away opportunities for high school and college students, ruin internship opportunities, ruin your daycare and nonprofits. It makes no sense to me economically to raise it to $15 an hour. But I do think a modest increase could be acceptable to many people.
Would companies feel pressured that are not paying minimum wage now, but more, would they feel pressured to also increase theirs by a commensurate amount?
Well, I think that's definitely true. And then you talk to people who are making, $10, $12 an hour. If you bring in starting employees at that rate, you have to raise everyone else's wages as well. And most of the businesses that we talk to, and even during the budget hearings in the Independent Fiscal Office, admitted, you're going to lose jobs. I believe the number was somewhere around 30,000 jobs. Mm-hmm. So where's the trade-off, and what is fair? And again, minimum wage jobs are meant to be a starting job when you're entering into the workforce. It's not meant to be the end of your career. And if you start paying someone $15 an hour, what motivates you to go out and get an education or learn a skill or learn a trade and improve yourself? The minimum wage was meant to help young people and people get that foothold into the workforce and then advance and grow.
All right, just a couple of moments left with State Representative Jim Struzzi. What's coming up for you?
Well, we're continuing to have the Reggie War. We're planning some rallies, I believe, in Harrisburg and possibly Pittsburgh. I'm hoping that my bill will be into the committee process here very shortly and get pushed through the House floor. And I know Senator Pittman is moving his bill as well. The more we learn about this, Todd, the more people in Indiana County should be concerned. There was a panel discussion on it yesterday. And again, it's just going to be so dire for Indiana County and Pennsylvania, and I think people really need to keep that in their minds. It's not going to go away, and the governor continues to move this forward, so we really need to be cognizant of the economic impacts of what that will mean. Meanwhile, I'm working on a lot of good bills. I have a bill that I'll be introducing here possibly in the next week or so to require more state procurement, to require a percentage of state procurement to come from hub zones, which are historically underutilized business zones. Turns out that all of Indiana County is a federal hub zone. So myself and Representative Jim Rigby, who has Johnstown, got together and we were trying to come up with ways to stimulate our economies here locally. And so we came up with this bill, and as I said, we'll be introducing it next week, I believe, that will require a higher percentage of state contracts to come from hub zones. So that could really bring a lot of business here to Indiana County and at least help some of our existing businesses get state contracts.
He is State Representative Jim Struzzi. We talked right up to the marker.
All right. Thanks for having me.
101.1 FM and AM 1160 WCCS, Homer City, TS. Homer City, TS.